So what is a social media expert?
I get very nervous about the term social media expert. I was reading a piece about an American called Mark Davidson who called himself a social media and an internet expert. And he had a Twitter feed with 56,000 followers and 3 people doing the tweeting for him.
So people paid to like pretend to be him at different times of the day and night.
And you know, you hear about the new economy and there's going to be a whole range of jobs we've never heard of now.
Yeah.
Seems to be that's one of them.
Tweet it on behalf of somebody, yeah.
And what he did was he fired one of them and didn't take the password away. Maybe didn't know that's how it worked. And this person went ballistic on his Twitter feed and said things like, we were supposed to post something about why bosses should tweet today, but it's not going to happen because Mark Davidson's on the golf course.
And saying he's an idiot and he doesn't deserve the followers he has and so on and so forth.
And also saying, I've been fired, I'm not only angry, but I'm drunk.
Fabulous. But I mean, the basis of this all is that whereas previously there were direct channels for people to receive information, like from the newspaper or from their parents, now we live in this kind of networked world, and social media feeds like Twitter, Facebook and Tumblr and so are much more important in informing public opinion, right?
I think that's critical. I think one of the critical things about it is also the idea that information no longer keeps office hours, and that idea that information is everywhere, and what's becoming more and more important are the people who actually filter the information. And I think what's interesting on Twitter, that even when there's something that is inaccurate or untrue that comes up on Twitter, it's very quickly taken down by the community. That people interact with that information and they change it and they look at the accuracy. So because of the ongoing nature of that conversation, it becomes a very fair place to engage in.
And I know I keep going on this show for people that watch it about how valuable Twitter is as a research tool, or not so much a research tool, but as an information channel, because you follow all the people that you know have the right kind of interests. So pretty much that's where you're getting your news from, because you know they will reference stuff on the web that is of interest that you'll find interesting because you're following them. So it all makes sense to me, and it means that you don't have to like be stuck on like, have I read my newspaper this morning, because you know that the feed is basically putting you in touch with everything you need to know all the time.
Absolutely, and I think that's also about who you choose to follow and how you decide what are the areas of interest you. I mean, the nice thing is that you can stop following people. So if somebody doesn't interest you or doesn't fulfill that need, you can stop. But I think the interesting thing is also that you can find so many people who have similar interests to you, but those similar interests come about through diverse influences, and that's I think that's the most exciting part. But again, I don't think Twitter is mandatory for anyone, but I do think it's around, if you've got an appetite for news, you'd be mad not to be using it. Because I think it's the most exciting news tool we've come across.
Okay, let's just go to the study that you did, because you used to be a journalist and you're now doing social media consulting, and you've got a couple of projects on the go, which I'm keen to hear about. But one of your most recent things was a study you did of CEOs who tweet. So just tell us a little bit about what you found there.
Well, I was interested to find out whether CEOs do tweet, and if they do, why they tweet. And for me, it was interesting to look at, I need to stop using that word interesting, but it is an interesting space. What I found was that it really comes with a recognition of accountability. For me, it's like when you see a CEO tweeting, they're actually saying, I'm accountable. And I think it's at this time in particular, you know, when there's protesters all over the world occupying Wall Street, and there's dictators being shot in the street, it's an interesting idea around leadership to say, at what point do you engage with people who are interested in what you do in your product, or your shareholders, or your customers, or your readers.
So the interesting example that you used in the article, which stood out for me, was First National Bank CEO Michael Jordan, who is on Twitter, doesn't follow a lot of people, but gets a lot of messages sent to him, and then also seems to kind of search the stream on the 3 letters FNB. So he's constantly like bringing up interesting things people are saying about the organization, and then retweeting that in a quirky and humorous way. And that, as you say, seems a very good example of how someone is doing a massive brand extension thing, and it seems to work very well. But of course it's dependent on him having a funny personality and being prepared to kind of engage with the medium on an ongoing basis.
Well, I think there are personalities that shouldn't be on Twitter, but for the same reason they're personalities who you wouldn't invite to a dinner party. I don't think it's very different to that. What I liked about FNB is that they've tried to cultivate this a kind of culture of helpfulness. So they have created another Twitter persona. There is a Twitter persona who
which is that
RB
RB Jacobs. But it's interesting, do you like that? Because the fact that that is just like this fictitious person and that's staffed by all sorts of different people always to me made it seem not that fun at all.
I think it's not, I think what's interesting about it, and again, it's the tone can sometimes be a little bit ingratiating on the RB Jacobs Twitter feed. But if you mention F&B at any time of day or night, you will get a response back, and the response will be, how can I take you to the next step?
So they're doing the same thing. So if somebody's tweeting, you know, the King Williamstown branch of F&B is dirty today, you'll get a response like within a couple of minutes.
And if you need help with your account, it actually happened to me, and I try and use Twitter very wisely. I try, and I really believe in the health of the digital community. So I don't say outrageous things, I don't swear, I don't let rip on people. I'm very careful about how I promote the values I believe in. And I did have a problem with the F&B site. This was quite a while back. And it was ongoing. The site had actually crashed, but they hadn't actually gone public with it to say there was a problem in the functionality of the site. And I think it was 11 o'clock at night, and I tweeted that the most frustrating bit about the site was that every time I log on and try pay someone, the only message I get is from the CEO saying it's fixed. And within about 5 minutes, I got I think it was RB Jacobs then, because this was quite the early days, saying, let's take this offline, discuss it, let's see how we can help you actually get the payment done. I think also from the start, their policy on Twitter was very much about they would never sell to customers on Twitter. It's really about customer engagement.
Okay. So it's not so much like, here's a new product,
no,
go.
they never do that. It's really about monitoring what people are saying about F&B. And I think it's also something that Trevor Nkube brought up, who I interviewed.
Right, the CEO of the Mail and Guardian media group that also owns publications in Zim.
Yeah, he brought it up. It's like he doesn't want to be left out of the conversation. And that's what pushed him onto Twitter. And he's also got an enormous following, and he follows a lot of people. I think he follows around 800 people. But recently, their website in Zimbabwe was hacked.
Exactly.
And he found out about it through readers.
And he was able to then keep people updated as to when it would be back online via Twitter as well.
So I think it becomes it's a critical tool in that way.
Yeah. Okay, we've got limited time here. So this idea, I always talk about how joblessness in America, which you know skyrocketed, is a function of people with certain kinds of skills not really being needed in the economy anymore because those jobs went to Vietnam or China, and that what people need to do is retrain themselves. And the example I always use is as a social media expert, because that's kind of like what's required. In your mind, do you think that in years to come, all corporates will have people that do this, and it's going to be something for young people watching the show to say, hey, I could skill myself to be a business operative in that area?
I think on the one hand, yes, but on the other hand, I think too many companies see social media and they see communication as something that's tactical, and they don't see it as strategic. And I think anybody who has a good social media profile as a company, that's really about it being infused from the top, from the bottom to the top and from the top to the bottom. And this idea that you actually, this is about how you communicate with your customers, with your staff. It's about an openness. And I do think, yes, it's creating a whole lot of new roles, as I said, that we never dreamed would be jobs.
But as you say, openness, because many corporates are not particularly open. And the reason they're not open is because they learned through bitter experience that somebody misbehaved somewhere and it caused a bit of fallout. So the idea here is that it's kind of, you've got to embrace the new world, but you've got to embrace it in its entirety and accept it warts and all.
But I think also we're moving out, we're still living with this overhanging legacy of the Industrial Revolution, and we still run companies like factories with the foreman at the top, looking down on the staff. The only one who's allowed
to make a decision, that kind of thing.
And I think that's shifting. I think what the digital this digital revolution we're living through has shown us that all of those systems are actually quite easy to break.
And companies are better for embracing the new way of doing things.
I think definitely.